Hi, my name is Fawn Stitley, and today I would like to share a professional development presentation on the topic of close reading. The reason for this professional development presentation is a requirement for my seminar and literacy language and reading course as I work toward my master's degree as a reading specialist at Shippensburg. So I have chosen this topic, close reading today, to share a lot of the things that I learned and hopefully to help you learn from the things that I was able to research on this topic. So I've kind of broken this presentation down into four areas. Why is close reading important to literacy? What is close reading? Looking at the definition and what it involves. How do I choose a complex text? And then most importantly, how do I apply and implement close reading, not only in my 3 to 5 classroom, but in my K to 2 classroom. So those of you that teach K to 2, please don't feel that I have forgotten about you. I have some really amazing things that I was able to find out on my journey through this research that I hope that you will benefit from as well. At the end of this presentation, I have some additional resources, hopefully that each of you can pull something from to help you out. So let's first take a look at why is close reading important to literacy. Well, the first reason is those that advocate for close reading say that it really gets students college ready. And what they mean by that is that the observances of K to 12 students, particularly here in the United States, they are just not prepared for college level complex texts. And so what they're saying is that close reading and the complex texts that are required to do a close reading are better able to prepare students for that. We can't wait until they're in middle school or high school to be introducing them to more complex texts. Close reading is also important because it helps English language learners. And we know that in all of our demographics, we all have kiddos that their first language is not English. But the downside this came from the International Literacy Association, is that quite often we are giving a watered down, oversimplified text to English language learners. Instead, they're saying with close reading, we're offering them this richly complex text, but we're also offering all the scaffolding and modeling for them to be able to read, and not only read, but comprehend and extract the meaning from the more complex text. So it's kind of, instead of dumbing things down, it's really kind of pulling them up and giving them more opportunities. Close reading also levels the playing field. What the International Literacy Association means by this saying is that we all can think of right now, imagine your kiddos in your classroom last year or over the last few years. We all know that we have kiddos that come from what we call literacy and language poor homes. And so when we start to read a text, we get a little concerned because we're like, oh, Johnny's not going to have this background knowledge and he's not going to understand that. But close reading levels the playing field because everything they are going to need is in the text that you have, and you're going to be reading it with them and to them, and they're going to be discussing it together. And there's so much modeling and scaffolding that goes into this that it levels the playing field because it's a fair game because everybody's going to be using the same text. And last but not least, and I thought this was a really good word picture, is that close reading builds a staircase of complexity. Like I said earlier, we want our students to be ready for college. That doesn't begin at the middle school and high school level. That really starts in our kindergarten classrooms. So if you can, just envision a staircase. And whatever grade level you're on, if you're on kindergarten or 12th grade or 6th grade or wherever you're at, look at your level of staircase as a step on the growth to understanding and being able to extract meaning from the more complex texts. And that all begins really at the very beginning of literacy in kindergarten, well, really in preschool. And last but not least, but probably the most important, why is this important to literacy? Because it is from the Common Core standards. So I have actually just copied and pasted, and this is a K to 12 standard from the state of Pennsylvania. Now I have I have bolded and italicized and underlined some things that I really thought accentuated why close reading is important. But here's what the Common Core standard says. Under key ideas and details, read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and to make logical inferences from it. Cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking to support conclusions drawn from the text. So as you can see, I bolded those words, read closely, right? There's your words, close reading. Why is this important? It's in the standard. You can see that I've underlined what the text says. I'm going to elaborate here very soon on the very first read. The whole focus is, what does the text say? The second and third read, you're going to be digging into those inferential things, the implicit things that are not directly stated, but you're going to dig a little more deeply and extract that meaning. And everything comes back to that textual evidence. What does the text say? Anything that you're answering is going to be supporting that. So before we go any further, I'm going to invite you to take a moment and go to Flipgrid. And I'm going to click on this. And if you've never been to Flipgrid, it is super easy. But what I'd like you to do is just make a very short video clip about what you know about close reading. Some of you may know a lot, some of you may not so much. Whatever you know, I want you to share. And it's really easy. Once you click on this, you record it, you'll see each other's videos up here, and you can listen to each other's to see what other people have said. I'm going to give you a moment to do that, and then you could come back and join the presentation. So what is the definition of close reading? Well, close reading is thoughtful, critical analysis of a text that focuses on significant details or patterns in order to develop a deep, precise understanding of the text form, the text structure, the author's craft, the meanings, the themes, whatever strategy you're working toward. What is your goal of this close reading activity? That's what you are doing as you're extracting that text. Now, close reading uses short passages or excerpts. You would not use a 3 to 4 page passage for this. Depending on the grade level, it might be 1 page or 2 pages, but they are short passages or excerpts from something that are longer. The second bullet point says diving right in. And what close reading means by this is you're not doing a picture walk. You're not activating prior knowledge. You're not building background. You are not looking through it and digging out 3 or 4 vocabulary words to pre-teach. You are jumping right in. Students are going to be listening as you read, possibly annotating through that first time and listening, and you are just jumping right into the passage. You're focusing on the text. Every question that you are going to be preparing for the lesson is going to be able to come straight from the text. Again, creating that level playing field. You're rereading deliberately. The lesson plan I'm going to share with you, and most that I came across in my research, was that close reading entails at least 3 readings, each with a very specific purpose, very deliberate, very intentional. Close reading involves annotating, and I'm going to assume that you have already pre-taught your kiddos a key. You possibly have it on your classroom wall, whether they're circling, highlighting, underlining, putting a box around things, drawing emojis, however you have taught your learners, depending on the grade level. Annotating is definitely a part of close reading. They're going to be using their notes to determine what this text is about. Close reading involves discussing with others, with peers, either with partners or small groups, or even with the whole class. And of course, it is responding to text-dependent questions and even those TDAs, especially for our 4th and 5th grade kiddos. So most close reading lessons that I came across in my research involve 3 readings. The first reading is focusing on what does the text say. The second reading, how does the text work? And the third reading is exploring the text more deeply. So during that first read, kiddos are listening, doing some annotating, and at the end of that first read, your question is, what was the text about? After the second read, you're looking closely at How is the text organized? Do we know what the text structure is? Is it a cause and effect? Is it a problem solution? Is it a sequence? Are there any vocabulary words that are confusing for you that maybe we need to clarify? Maybe we need to use a context clue, or maybe it's something that you need to directly share with them. At this point, you're going to be using think alouds as the teacher and modeling. You know, this part of the story made me think of this, and you're modeling that so that they can understand how you're thinking, and hopefully modeling that, scaffolding that for them as they can, so during this second read. You're going to be looking at the author's purpose. Like, why do you think the author wrote this? You know, that PIE, you know, was it to persuade, to inform, to entertain you? If you're going to use a graphic organizer, and I have included some of those in the resources at the end of the presentation, now would be the time to pull that out. The third read is where you're going to be exploring more deeply. We're going to be looking more closely at possibly themes and symbolism, and digging in to those implicit things, that reading between the lines, if you will. Depending upon grade level, this would be the opportunity to give opinions and arguments, still coming back and basing it upon the text, but you are allowing your learners to kind of explore. And again, text dependent questions. You predetermined, what do I want the kids to really zero in on? And that third reading, after that, you're doing either some kind of project extension, but definitely some kind of writing piece. Okay. So I think the most challenging part of close reading is how to choose a text. And Jerry Thompson, who actually came to visit our school last year and has written many books on how to write analysis papers, talks about the qualitative, quantitative, and a reader and task considerations when choosing a text for close reading. So looking at qualitative measures, is this text going to offer my kiddos a deeper understanding? Is this going to stretch their understanding? Does the text itself follow familiar language conventions? We don't want it to be confusing in that type of sense. What's the text structure of this text? Is this something that's going to be brand new to them? Looking at those qualitative measures to help you determine whether this text is a good fit for you. As far as quantitative, this one, ladies and gentlemen, comes down to reading level. Is it appropriate for the reading levels of your learners? And then how can I, if it's going to be a little bit more challenging, and that's okay, how can I scaffold my students to ensure their success with this text? Now, I have included a link to Lexile.com, and that may help you to determine what kind of level for the majority of your readers might be applicable. And you obviously have to keep the reader and the task in mind when you're choosing a text. How much prior knowledge do my students have to have about this topic, and how interested are they going to be in this text that I'm pulling? What will be difficult for my students in reading this passage? So even though close reading involves diving right in, you're not doing a picture walk, you're not activating prior knowledge, I will say that you need to use your professional judgment. If you found an awesome complex text and it meets every other criteria, but there's a word or maybe a phrase that you know this is going to really trip them up, then by all means, give them that information and forge on. If everything else is being met, the qualitative, quantitative, and the reader and task considerations are all there, by all means, jump right in. Now, I want to share a resource that I found. If you already know about this, that's great, but this just rocked my world. In the Common Core State Standards, there are appendices. And as you can see on this orange strip, when I scroll down to the ELA appendices under the Common Core State Standards, okay, when I click on Appendix B, it opens a PDF. And within this PDF, and let me make it just a little bit smaller so we can see it on my screen. This is text exemplars and sample performance text from grades K up through 12. It breaks it down. I'm scrolling down here as quickly as I can for you to see that. Hang on, I think I went past it. There it was, missed it. Okay. Sorry. Oh, there's K-1 text exemplars. It gives you the title, the author, and it gives you the page numbers, because in this appendix, they give you each of these examples. This is giving us, here's grades 2 to 3, and here are grades 4 and 5, and so on and so forth. And if I scroll down here, you will see what I mean. Here's the text. You could copy and paste or print this, This was a game changer for me because, as I said, I think the most challenging part of the close read isn't really the lesson plan and me pre-reading and predetermining text-dependent questions and even an extension project and a writing piece. I think it's finding that perfect kind of Goldilocks, if you will, complex text. It's just the right thing. Now, I wanted to add this in because I thought this was important. Tim Shanahan, of course, I read several things of his, and we became acquainted with him last year during Dr. Slattery's class last summer. And Tim shared a few things that I thought were worth sharing with you. He says, not all texts lend themselves to deep reading. Diary of a Wimpy Kids, my 3rd through 5th graders love them. They're a fun read. They are not a complex text. You want to select a high quality text that is worth not only reading once or twice, but at least 3 or more times. Tim uses the analogy that a great complex text is like looking at a painting that is just absolutely exquisite. And you look at it and you're like, wow, oh my gosh. And you walk away and you come back an hour later and you're like, why I didn't see that the first time? He says that's what a complex text, close reading experience should be like for our learners, that every time we come back, we're like, whoa, I didn't see that. I'm looking at it in a different light. And I thought that was a really cool way to approach this. He also highly recommends that we are able to find layers of meaning and symbolism and themes. So even though close reading is often associated with nonfiction expository texts, don't be afraid to use this with fiction, because you're only going to get themes and symbolism in those fiction type texts. I think that close reading can be a great use, particularly with poetry. Elizabeth, I know you're probably shaking your head from teaching 5th grade, and I know Lindsay, you teach 5th grade as well, that poetry is super duper hard. Close reading is going to give you that opportunity to read it multiple times and to dig into those layers. I thought that was a really helpful tool for me to think about. And obviously, teachers must closely read the text themselves before the students do. You need to have a lesson plan, folks, with this. This is not thrown together. Close reading is not something that you are going to use every week. You certainly are not going to use this right off the bat at the beginning of the school year. You're going to have routines in place. You have a lot of things set in place. You've already taught them how to annotate. And they are, really you've got good classroom management going on, and you have this ready to go. It is probably not something you're going to use in guided groups. It's something you're going to use more with your whole group because of the scaffolding and modeling. So I did pull a sample lesson, and I'm not going to take a ton of time on this because I know that each of you are very intelligent and can figure all of that out. But I pulled a 4th grade lesson from Common Lit. If you're not familiar with Common Lit, is a free resource, and it is an amazing resource. It was introduced to me several years ago. So I pulled the passage Lewis and Clark, American Explorers, because I think that this close reading offers itself to doing some of those maybe science topics, those content topics of history and social studies that we can pull in, because they can be a little bit more challenging as well. So I have a copy of the passage there, and within that passage, and then the link is there, are even predetermined questions and a writing piece. So in this sample lesson, the first thing you're going to do is remind students of the annotating marks. You're not going to be giving them specific things to look for, but you have already pre-taught this before you've even gotten into close reading. So you're going to read it the first time through. Then after reading it to the class, I would recommend that you have them partner up and share what the text was about, because that's what the first read is about. You might do this just by having them talk about it, turn and talk, and then share out as a class. Or you might have them grab a whiteboard. Each of my kiddos has a small mini whiteboard in their desks, and write down this passage was about, and write a sentence. However you want to approach that, but that first read, what is the text about? You can either read it the second time as a whole group again to them, or you could have them partner read depending on the age level and the grade level of your learners. And at this point, after the second read, I would have them share any annotations they've made. Are there any unknown vocabulary words, and clarify those things. But now we want to start looking at the organization pieces. How does the text look as far as structure? Why do you think the author wrote this text? You're going to be doing some think alouds and maybe a graphic organizer at this point. I will be honest, with close reading, I really prefer to use the text and a lot of the annotations at every paragraph. I have my kids write who and what. Who is in this paragraph? What are they doing? Just a very quick, so that they can look back and get this very quick summary and use that to figure out the main idea. But if you're a graphic organizer person and you want to use that, by all means, now is the time to pull that out. This third read, again, you know your learners. You can either read it aloud or maybe choral read it together, partner read it, or depending on how far into close reading you are, they might be able to read this independently. Now you're going to explore those text-dependent questions that you've already predetermined. Allow students to explore opinions at this point. With this passage about Lewis and Clark, you might want to ask, would you have participated in this expedition? And they need to answer why or why not, and cite evidence. Maybe they want to explore, do you think they were heroes? Some people think they are, some people think they aren't based upon this text. Why would you say that? And having them cite text evidence. In this lesson, they actually shared a text-dependent analysis question, looking at the Native Americans and how does the author describe the relationship between the American explorers and the Native Americans they met, and of course, citing evidence. So again, those are just some suggestions. Now, those of you in that K-2 band, I did not forget about you. In fact, I found something absolutely amazing while I was doing my research. This is a book that I purchased in my very first class with Dr. Philpott when I started my master's program. It's called 40 Strategies for Guiding Readers Through Informational Text. And a lot of the information that I found on close reading was in this chapter in this book. But the chapter right after close reading is a chapter called Close Listening. And it is specifically built upon the model of close reading, but how to use that in a K-2 classroom. Again, we're coming back to that staircase. You know, in kindergarten and first grade, we all have a role to play in this journey of getting our kids ready to graduate and either be college or career ready. So this close listening is a specific type of classroom reading or listening experience modeled upon the close reading. It typically requires K-2 students to carefully listen. Okay, that's why it's called listening, to multiple teacher read alouds of a short, complex text in order to develop a deep understanding of what the text says, how it works, and what it means. So still using that close reading, what it says, what it means, how is it working, all those things. And then students are going to answer and discuss text-dependent questions. And the big difference here is this is not personal connections. This is text dependent. So we want to make sure that, and especially in that K-2 band, we know they like to share stories, keeping them tied to that. What does the text say, you know? And you're of course scaffolding student understanding, them using peer discussions, you're offering think alouds and modeling that, a graphic organizer or any other strategy to deepen student thinking. And so I kind of put an example in here. I think one way that you could have them determine what the text is about, especially for our K-2 friends, is you might ask, what would you tell a friend that you learned from this text? And that kind of helps it feel a little more personal to them. Like if you had to go home and tell mom and dad about this story, what would you tell them it was about? Or what would you tell a friend? And that second read, maybe you're going to focus more on the vocabulary. And depending again on the grade level, maybe you're not looking so much at text structure yet. Maybe you're looking more at author's purpose. Again, looking again at the grade level and what your learners need. And this might progress as you go throughout the year, of course. And that third read, of course, is really digging into deeper meanings, looking at the pictures. What do they match what you think the author is saying, and why or why not? An extension activity, a writing activity. I've also included that Appendix B again from Common Core Standards, because again, I thought that was such an amazing resource, and I'm definitely going to be availing myself of that this year. And this would be great for all of you in that K-2 band. So I've just added these two resources in here, especially for my K-2 friends. This was a blog post, and this is called Learning to the Core, Close Reading in Kindergarten and First Grade. There are some amazing things on here. They are all free. If you just click on them, they're going to take you right there. And this was a video of a literacy coach. She actually has her doctorate, talking about what close reading and what it looks like, and not just the 3 to 5 band, but the K to 5 band. It's a short video. It's only 4 minutes. I'm not going to take time during the presentation to play it for you, but I thought it was super informative and really had some great ideas in addition to what I shared. Now, let's be honest. Who doesn't love to play a game? So I've added some creative ways to use close reading. How do we get our kids, intrinsically motivated? Well, sometimes we have to do the extrinsic things. So I've added a couple of games in here, and these games actually came from Bill Atwood of Collins Associates, and we all love Collins. So he shared 2 games that you can play while you're doing a close reading. The first one is called #MarkItUp. And the ultimate goal is for students to be able to retell a section of text just by using their notations. And I think when they can see the importance of this and the value of it, they are really going to love this. You might want this to be a partner or small group work, offer tickets or, piece of candy or something to get them motivated. #MarkItUp. The other one is called a look back game. Again, the goal is, can they use their notes? Can they use their annotations to answer these questions? So they are answering text-dependent questions that you're determining, and they're using their annotations to look back into the text and quickly find the key details to support an answer or question that you are asking. Now, here's the difference. They need to be able to cite the location of the evidence and then elaborate on how the text supports the answer. Again, just some fun ways. I would do this with partners or small groups and just kind of make that just a fun way to wrap that up. Here are some additional links I've added. This is a group of videos, a graphic organizer, discussion cards. I thought this was really great. These are color coded. I don't know about you, but I love having discussions, even from kindergarten. How do you teach them? This is something that you could print out and make a copy for each of your kids. I have some task cards for main idea and supporting details that you could use, whether you're using them with a close read or maybe even your small group setting. Talk to the text annotations is actually a way to teach kids. This is a graphic organizer that if you are inclined to use those, this would be a great tool for that. And this was a website that I found for close reading practice passages for grades 1 through 6. So avail yourself of any of those. Here are my references for all of the research that I included within this. And I hope that you have learned some things about close reading along with me. I found a lot of valuable information, and I'm quite excited actually to apply it to my 3rd grade classroom. So now that you've watched the presentation, would you please take a moment and do an evaluation form? And I will look forward to getting your responses. Please be honest. I want to know what helped you, what can I do better? What would be better? Because if I have the opportunity to share this, I want it to be as great as possible. Thank you for watching. Take care.